There's a European bloc. There's an East Asian bloc. There's a Central Asian Russian bloc. There's an African bloc, etc. Right? So like the nation state boundaries are blurring, and I think essentially the European bloc is going to supersede America.
But this leads me to my next question. Do you still believe that we are living through the revelations now?
Well, the thing about Revelations, it's not like one time period. So I would say that yeah, certain things in Revelations now are applicable to this particular era or empire, you know.
I mainly wanted to know about uh the end days. That's what I'm hinting at, man.
Hmm.
Because you
Well,
you were very like back, a few years, like 5 years ago, whenever we spoke for the first, you were very adamant on the prophecy of the end days in the revelations. So are you still like sure about this? Are we living through the end days right now?
I'm less adamant, but I still have the same. I would say most likely I have the same general interpretation as I did when we spoke.
Mhm.
It's something honestly I have not returned to for many years. I had this period of being very energized by prophetic things, and then uh, it's sort of passed, and I have my way of looking at it. However, like I said, I'm less adamant about it. I would say, stepping back from it for a few years as I have, but I pretty much see it the same way. I'm open to how other people see it.
So stepping into the current events, um what do you make of everything that's going on right now, globally? Is this are all these conflict zones, is it, do you think it's some sort of a ritual taking place? Do you think that we're heading into maybe a wider spread world catastrophe? Like what's going on in your opinion, man?
Um, I can't give you the best take on that now. A few years ago, that would have been something I would have been a little more engaged in. At this point, could probably give you an idea of some things, but it hasn't changed much. If we spoke about these things, if you look at like Revelation 17, 18, Mystery Babylon, I'm pretty, I'm pretty certain, and this interpretation has gained steam in the years since we've talked about it. It's become a little more popular, I think. That's basically America. And if you read 1718, it's giving you, it's talking about America. And if you try to interpret the symbology, and if you use the other prophets as references to interpret the symbology in Revelations, you can get a better idea of what those symbols are talking about.
I remember you famously said America the great whore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is a reference to basically the American Empire, and I think there's a really striking symbolic similarity between the Statue of Liberty and the description of the Great Whore of Babylon. I always found it very fascinating. Like it's if you read it, which I don't have it in front of me, but it's just compelling. I'm like, this really sounds like it's related.
So are we really seeing the fall of America, if you will?
Well, that's my interpretation, my take on that verse. So, like, I think my take on it is there's been um, there's been a build up to a war with Iran for like 50 years. I think that, in my opinion, will probably be the catalyst for some international conflict of crazy proportions, and that will lead to the destruction of the American empire, essentially.
Do you have any predictions on what's happening between Russia and Ukraine and NATO? Like,
Hmm.
do you have any predictions as far as this goes? And maybe, relating to the prophecies.
Uh, I can say only like my interpretation of. Let's stick with just Revelation 17:18, just so it doesn't get really um, out there. But like, I would say the European mm, multi. I don't even know what to call it. It's not really an. You're not talking about nation states really anymore. They're kind of the nation state system is sort of going and receding into the past, and we're going into sort of like a, I don't know what you want to call it. Like you got these big blocks that are forming. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
European block. There's an East Asian block. There's a Central Asian Russian block. There's an African block, etc. Right? So like the nation state boundaries are blurring, and I think essentially the European block is going to supersede America. I think my interpretation of scripture, again, this is not like a hard thing for me right now, but like I think um, somehow or another, the downfall of America is going to lead to some kind of profit for the European bloc. Okay, I think the Roman Empire is sort of uh, it's alive and well in a way, like within the European bloc. And I think the power, the keys of power, international power, are going to return back to that, to that. They're going to go away. It's going to go away from America. It's going to return to the European bloc. How that's going to play out exactly, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's what I think. And in terms of Russia, and I don't know. I really don't know how Russia is going to play into that.
It's so interesting that you say that because a lot of people are actually saying that the fall of America will have Europe actually fall before America. So, but you're saying that this Roman rule will return to Western Europe, basically.
Um, I don't know if it'll be Western Europe or Southern Europe or something. I just think that the power monopoly of the old Roman, maybe families, you could say, it's it's still there today. There's still a huge
Of
power
course.
monopoly from that region in general, and but a lot of those families are operating in other Western nations,
Of
and
course.
so I'm not sure if this will lead to like France getting devastated, Britain getting devastated. I don't know. I just think that the reins of power will return to that Roman seat,
Mhm.
somehow. And maybe perhaps Russia is like a part of that, in that. And I know you spoke about this in your podcast, how, like there's, people in a way they sort of separate Russia from the West, and it's like as if it's a totally different thing. And I think there's a lot of connections between Russia and the Roman Empire, just like there's a lot of connections between Western Europe and the Roman Empire. And yeah, I don't know, like perhaps Russia might play a bigger role in that than I think. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what do you think is going on in Palestine, man, and this whole situation with Israel? Do you have any opinions on that?
Um, Opinions on it. You know, I haven't looked much into it. I know there's terrible atrocities going on in Palestine just from word of mouth, but that's nothing new.
Hmm.
Just like the war in Ukraine was nothing new when it became a thing. So it's just more of the same on a greater scale, I guess. Is like the Israeli government is like every other government. They're oppressive and they oppress certain minorities that they don't like, and that happens to be the Palestinians. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna speak on like anything more. Like I would say the Israeli government is has been from I've seen documentaries. I haven't been there, you know. There's a lot of Palestinian people in America and Toronto. You can talk to them. They talk about the things they've been through. So, I think they're living in a hard situation. I think the Israeli government's giving them a hard time, and that's been going on for a long time. I think Israel and America have a mutual defense treaty, and so the American government, the Israeli government are working together for most things that they do. So I think they're pretty connected in everything that goes on, and I think that also ties into like some kind of, if there was a sort of a lead up to a greater war, I think there's definitely a lot of potential for that in Palestine because, of course, you're talking about other Muslim nations who consider them brothers, and it's creating a lot of tension between the Jewish faction in Israel and the Muslim factions all around them. It's sort of like I see it almost like you're poking this bear. Like Israel is this little Jewish island in the middle of a giant Muslim sea, and they're
Hmm.
just poking this bear. Like imagine if like someone was beating up your little brother in front of you, you know, and like Palestine's like this little Muslim community, and they're the Israeli government's just beating them up, and then like all these other Muslim countries are around them. I just see it as a really unstable situation
Hmm.
with the
I
Israeli
I'm
government.
I'm just not sure if the Islamic world is that unified. But I see what you're saying. Do you still, like all these years later, do you still differentiate between the Jewish and the Jew?
Yeah, I mean, like, I can't get like a DNA test for people, right? I don't know. I think I don't know, like
But I'm talking as far as the movement and the idea, like of what you talked about years ago.
yeah, I still think, like, for instance, people, let's say Ashkenazi Jewish people, right? I don't know, I don't want to offend anyone. Like, if they have pride in their heritage, just like if you're Jewish and you have pride in your heritage and you believe you came from Abraham, like, not saying you didn't, right? I'm just saying the claim. Let's say the claims that some Zionists make in Israel. There's certainly, I think it's a fair statement to make that there's radical factions and religious factions within Israel, right? Some of them make claims to the land solely based on their ancestry, right? They say they have the right to Israel and Palestine because they are the blood descendants of the biblical people and the Hebrews. I am not convinced of that.
Hmm.
I am not convinced of that. I
Yeah,
think that
because
I can make a case for other people as well. So,
they're trying to tell us that these pale skin, redhead Ashkenazis. somehow migrated from over there into Eastern Europe mainly, and with evolution their skin color changed, and I really don't see it either, man. I don't see it, man.
I think the evidence is, from what I've seen, it's nebulous and it's not anything to build a case on. Certainly not, like, I don't think, even if you were the blood descendants of the people in the Hebrew Bible, would it justify invading the, like, there's been Palestinians living there for generations and generations and generations.
Centuries.
Yeah, like, they have families, their children don't know anything about any of this. They've just been living there, like maybe growing olives or something. I don't know what they do there. They have some olive trees, I've seen that. And like, you come in and you just invade their country and you're like, well, we used to live here 2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
Is that justified, even if you are the Hebrews? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and especially that we know that the state of Israel was created by, these different families in Great Britain as sort of like this generic state. It's not like was man made basically, for whatever reasons they did it for. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. It doesn't give them an excuse.